Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Developer Maruf. In lesson 8 we will learn about functions, expressions and arrow functions. These are alternative ways to write functions in JavaScript and they are very popular in modern code. Functions, expressions store functions in variables, and arrows functions give us a shorter, cleaner syntax. Both are powerful tools you will see everywhere in JavaScript. Let's start coding. I've already created our index.html and link our JavaScript file with it. So let's write our JavaScript here. Let's start with function expressions. Instead of declaring a function with a function keyword, we store it in a variable. So let's add a comment, function expressions, and let's have function expression stored in a variable. So I'll create a variable const greet is equals to function parenthesis curly bracket, and inside that we have our log salam. So now let's call this function. Let's have our variable and parenthesis. This is how we call our function. So this is a function expression. Function is stored in a greet variable. So if we save this, we can see in the console our message salam alaikum. So this is how function expressions work, just like function declarations, which we have covered in our previous lesson, which is this one. So the only difference is we just store that function in this variable. So let's create one more function with the parameters inside that. So let's add a comment, function expression with parameters. Let's have const add is equal function, let's say a and b curly braces. Inside that we can return any value. Let's say return a plus b. So we are adding a plus b here. Whatever the output of this is, we can have that value inside our variable add. So let's call this add, or let me call this in a log so we can see inside our console. So let's say add 10 is a and 20 is b. So we will have 30 inside our console because its output is 30. Let's save this, and you can see in the console we have 30 because 10 plus 20 is 30. So this is how we can add values to our function with the parameters. So now let's see arrow functions. They are a shorter way to write functions. They were introduced in ES6. Arrow functions use an arrow, which is an equal sign and greater than sign together. So let's start with a basic arrow function with no parameters. Let's add our comment here, arrow functions. Let's start with a basic arrow function, no parameters. Let's create a variable, say hello equals to parenthesis arrow and curly braces. This is how you write the arrow function. This is the way to write function if you want to write an arrow function. The only difference is we just remove this function into that arrow to make it an arrow function. So this is the only symbol you can identify that it is arrow function. So let's have our log inside this arrow function and say hello from arrow function. Let's save this and let's call this say hello function, and let's comment these out so we can see our log clearly. Let's save this, and you can see here hello from arrow function. And now let's try it with one parameter, arrow function with one parameter, and let's say const greet user is equals to name and arrow. Inside this we can have our log, and let's have our backticks and say salam alaikum $sign and our parameter here and an exclamation. Let's call this greet user, and let's add our name here. Let's say Maruf, and let's save this, and you can see here Assalamu alaikum Maruf. So this is how you can create arrow function with one parameter. Let's see with multiple parameters, and let's have const multiply is equals to a comma b because we will return that. Let's add a return statement, and let's multiply a and b. And if you want, you can also store that into a variable. Let's say const product is equals to multiply, and we can pass 10 comma 2 20, and we can see our message inside our log. Let's say product and comma our product. So you can see here we have 200 because when we multiply 10 and 20 it will give 200. So that was it for arrow function. But let me show you other feature of this arrow function as well, which we call implicit return. So arrow function have a special feature called implicit return. If your function only has one expression, you can skip the curly braces and return keyword. Let me show you how. So let's add a comment here, arrow function with implicit return, and let's have const let's say subtract is equals to a comma b arrow, and you can write a minus b. So this is called implicit return. You can notice there are no curly braces or no return keyword. The arrow function automatically return the result. So if we log this, let's store that into a difference variable subtract 10 comma 3 and have our log. Let's say difference comma difference, and let's comment these out as well. Okay, so you can see we have 7. This is how you write arrow functions with implicit return when you have only one expression. This is much shorter than writing return a minus b inside curly braces. Let's create another with one parameter. Let's comment these out and have our const square is equals to, let's say, x arrow x multiply x. And let's have our result is equals to square, and let's have 5. And let's have our log square of 5. Let's see the result. You can see we have 25. That's how we can add our arrow function with one parameter. Now let's see with no parameter. Let's say const get message is equals to parenthesis arrow, and let's say welcome to developer Marius, and let's have it inside our message get message, and let's log this message. So you can see welcome to developer Marius. So this is how you can write arrow functions with implicit return. So let's comment this out, and let me show you all 3 ways to write the same function so you can see the difference. So let me add a comment comparison of all 3 ways. So let's say this is our function. Let's declaration. Let's comment this out, and let's have function add declaration a comma b curly braces return a plus b, and our second function expression const add expression is equals to function a comma b curly braces and return a plus b, and our final arrow function const add arrow. Let me show you the implicit return one which we have covered above. If we log these 3, you can see our first addition, these are the 3. You can see here we got our results here, and this is the way how we write 3 of them. So they all give, but arrow function are more concise here. It is much more cleaner and easier to read than these. Arrow functions can also have conditions inside them. Let me show you that as well. It's out, and let's say arrow functions with conditionals. So let's create a function that finds the maximum of 2 numbers. Let me show you how we can create that. Let's say const get max is equals to this is a and b arrow curly braces, and say if a is greater than b, then we should return a, and if it is not greater than b, return b. So this is how we can get our maximum number. Let's add a log and say a maximum, and let's say get max, let's say 10 and 5. If we save this, you can see 10, it is returning this one a, because a is 10. If we write here 11, we will have our 11, because now it is returning b, because a is not greater than b, b is 11, so it is returning the maximum. So you can try this on your own. Practice this with ternary operators, which we have covered in our previous lessons, and you can also use arrays and many things to do. You just have to practice and build a grip on these functions. So that's it for today's lesson. You just learned about function expressions and arrow functions. Function expressions store functions and variables, giving us more flexibility. Arrow functions provide a shorter, cleaner syntax, especially for simple functions. All 3 ways, function declaration, function expression, and arrow functions, but arrow functions are very popular in modern JavaScript. So in lesson 9, we will learn about scope and closures, which are important concepts for understanding how variables work in functions. If this helped you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone learning JavaScript. Jazakallah khair for watching. Allah Hafiz.